Did you guys have any hesitation in casting Jonathan Roumie as Lonnie Frisbee, considering Jonathan's already associated with Jesus due to his concurrent portrayal of Christ in The Chosen?
No, I think quite the opposite. For me, at least, I thought, "Whoa, this is going to be crazy," because it's such a radical departure. It's going to be like a different voice, a different posture. Maybe the length of the hair I can see. But what's really funny is people thought that we were writing like a Chosen joke when he gets up. He gets up at one point and he says, "People say I'm trying to look like Jesus.
Yes,
I can't think of anybody else I'd rather look like."
yes.
People thought we wrote that maybe as like an inside baseball Chosen joke. No, Lonnie actually said that in an interview, so
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. He's a kid, he's a street preacher trying to emulate Jesus as much as he can. And he would wear robes and deerskin capes, and, he would do all that stuff. And so I don't know, man, I think he did it. I will say though, for the rabid Chosen fans out there, it probably takes them a couple scenes when they're like throw down the movie. It's like, why is Jesus talking like he's from the Northeast?
Yeah.
So I think to your point, maybe I made peace with it, faster than I should have. But I don't know. To me, I knew he was going to come in with something completely different. He's like one of the most fantastic actors I've ever had a chance to work with. So I was never worried that he couldn't do it or wouldn't give us enough dimensionality away from the Jesus character. But at the same time, like for the people that know him and see him in that role and like just binge The Chosen over and over, because it's such a great feeling film, and his portrayal of Jesus is so warm and kind and friendly and loving, and I don't know, it's so beautiful what he does. So I can understand a bunch of people being tripped up by him, going a different way, and at times acting badly, as a human. So I'm sure that would be an interesting thing to unpack with some rabid Chosen fans. But from my standpoint, from my vantage point, just as a filmmaker, I think it's just a wonderful departure. And you look at him, you're like, whoa, this dude's got range, So yeah.
How did Kelsey Grammer first become involved with the film?
Yeah, man, that's another great story. Kelsey was John Irwin's number one pick, and I was all about it too. And it turns out Kelsey was really on this deep spiritual quest. He was on a retreat with some of his friends from the film community, and on this retreat, they were lamenting the fact that a lot of the stuff that they had done in their film careers was just for money. They wished that more of their body of work had contained something of spiritual or social or cultural significance. And they made a bit of like a blood oath there that night. They said, from going forward, as much as we can, sometimes you got to just take a job and pay the bills. We get it. But it's going forward as much as we can. Let's do something of spiritual significance. So they go home. Kelsey goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning, and the Jesus Revolution script was in his inbox. And he opened it up that morning, read it all the way through without stopping, clicked out of it, called his agent and said, I don't care about the money. Find out what the schedule is. I'm in, I'm doing this. And so he really took that as a sign. And in his mind, it was almost like they put up a prayer that weekend, like, God, will you please send us stuff that would allow us to be more spiritually significant in the work that we take on. So for him, it was a bit of an answer to a prayer, and to inherit him in the time of his life where he's at right now, which is this deep, deep spiritual peace and presence that he's carrying. I mean, dude, I was so drawn to him. Like, he's had a lot worse stuff happen to him in his life than me. He has walked a very deep valley, man. And he has more peace than me on a daily basis. And I found myself like seeking him out in between takes and like, hey man, tell me about your faith, and tell me about the stuff that happened to you, and like how you were able to forgive this and let it go. And man, dude, I would go to church with him, man, just in tears. He's a powerful human being, man. And just where he's at right now, he gave that to the world. He just opened up his heart and said, where I'm at right now, I'm fully vulnerable. I'm fully here. I'm fully authentic. I'm going to put everything that I'm feeling and going through in my life into this role. And it's the greatest thing he's ever done.
I thought I heard that his wife had said that she thought this was his best work.
Yeah, someone sent me, that's very true. And someone sent me an NPR podcast, film podcast today, and they said it. They're like, this is the greatest thing he's ever done. And I think it's undeniably so.
It's got to be kind of surreal too, also to see Kelsey Grammer openly tearing up in interviews as he discusses his role in working on this film.
Yeah, it's because of where he's at spiritually. Yeah. And I mean, I wish crowds of people could get around him and sit and listen to him, because your heart would explode with love and peace. You would feel the spirit. I mean, he's just he's being led gently by the hand through some beautiful spiritual pastures right now, and and he's sharing with everybody. And man, it's sometimes, man, you know, directors, they get really arrogant and they take all the credit for everything, even the stuff they didn't do. And I just find that it's a fool's errand, because number one, it takes hundreds of people to make a movie. It's like that director arrogantly taking all the credit for their movie. That's like them being on a pirate ship with no crew and thinking they can sail somewhere, anywhere. You can't. If it's a 400-man ship, I'm sorry, you're not going anywhere. And so I think for me, especially with Kelsey, just feeling like I was getting to ride along in this beautiful experience and not take credit for any of it. Everything aligned, and it just felt really guided. And I'm so grateful that he said yes to this movie would not be the same without all of these cast saying yes. And, you know, very much so the case with Kelsey.
Both Jonathan and Kelsey portray real life people. How much research did you that you do yourself on the Jesus movement to understand these real life characters before you had to arrive on the set the first day?
Oh, I did a ton of research. Like I said, I read a handful of books. I watched some documentaries. There's a really interesting documentary called Lonnie Frisbee, The Life of a Hippie Street Preacher, I think. And it's like a really bare bones documentary, but I found it very compelling. And I think they actually interviewed Chuck's son for it. So I really liked that documentary. I read a book called God's Forever Family, and it was very academic, and it had a lot of research and like polls and things of like, what were you reading at the time? Or like, what were your favorite musicians? What were your favorite bands? What were your favorite movies? And I was, you know, they were interviewing the Jesus people of the time. And so I found that to be a very informative book. And then the rest of it was watching old archives I would find of like Chuck preaching or Lonnie preaching, or when they would get on TV shows, or when they got on Catherine Coleman. And we definitely wanted to do a shout out to the real Catherine Coleman, you know, for having them on her show, which she did. And so we recreated a lot of that in a cinematic way. But yeah, it was a lot of research, man. A lot of research, not just into the Jesus movement, but into the time period. There was a crazy level of detail that went into crafting this film to make it feel like you were actually in 1969. So yeah, man, a lot of love from a ton of great minds, I think, that went into this and gave it all the polish and the detail and the authenticity that we needed.
And obviously, you know, one of the most fascinating, you know, characters who is a real life person in the movie is that of Lonnie Frisbee, who you've mentioned. And I've read accounts of people who knew him, and some of them literally said that being with him was like being with one of the apostles. Did you hear any stories like that as well?
Oh yeah, all the time. I've heard crazy stories about him. Obviously, like, you know, legends build up around bigger than life personalities. But I mean, I heard one story, and again, I don't know if it's true, but there was a guy, he was down and out, he's about to lose everything. And he went underneath this oak tree and asked God a question. And he was like, God, I just need to know yes or no. I need to know yes or no tomorrow, or like my life's going to explode. And he saw Lonnie, I think, that next day. And Lonnie just looks at him. He goes, yeah, you were asking God something underneath an oak tree yesterday. And God says, yes. You know, and the guy just like fell on the ground and like lost his mind, you know? So he definitely was a seer for sure. I definitely think he had a definitely strong spiritual gifts. And I think he was a very complex, complicated human being. But me and John and Jonathan, especially, we were grieved by the fact that he was actually written out of church history just because of some of his moral failings and some of the struggles that he had, or what some would perceive to be moral failings, or what others would not. And so the big thing we wanted to do was bring him into the story and try to do a character justice, based on him being involved, and really reinstantiate him into the central narrative, which people have tried to kind of wipe him out of over the decades.